The film began and Dina laid her head on my shoulder. I hugged her and held her tight. Hector touched her with his paw and kept whining. Dina gently patted his ear, moved away from me, and sat down next to him. He laid his head on her lap. Once again, I had become the third wheel. It was then that I had the thought that something might really be wrong in our relationship. Hello everyone, my name is Tom. I'm 22 years old, and that's what has tormented me for the past few months. When I met Dina, she wasn't alone. She had a faithful and devoted friend in her life, an Amstaff named Hector. You need to know her story in order to understand that he really meant a lot to her. Dina experienced a tragedy as a child. It happened on a very ordinary day when Dina and her Labrador Caesar were playing on the front lawn. They were playing fetch. Caesar was still a puppy and was very active and hyper. When Dina threw the ball too hard, it rolled out into the street and Caesar ran after it, just as a car was passing. Caesar passed away that day. Dina was 8 years old and she blamed herself for his death. Her parents offered to get her a new puppy on several occasions, but she refused them all. Her childhood trauma gave her no rest, but then it happened. She was 19 years old. She was returning home from her friend's house. It was already dark outside. Suddenly, a shadow moved from the wall and straight towards Dina. "I need your handbag." The robber's hands flashed in the darkness. The robber was clutching the bag and yanking it as hard as he could, but Dina wouldn't let go. When he tugged again, Dina lost her balance and fell, but didn't let go of her bag. The robber lifted his hand and she closed her eyes, waiting for the blow, when suddenly, he appeared out of nowhere and charged the offender. He sunk his teeth deep into the man's arm and didn't let go. Dina got to her feet, not believing that she had been saved. She called the police. The dog held the robber until they arrived. That evening, Dina didn't go home alone. It was obvious from Hector's appearance that he had been neglected. He was battered and rather thin. On his side was a rough scar from an old wound. Maybe he had been abandoned, or was he lost? Dina hoped that he didn't have owners, but she honestly tried to find them. But no one seemed to be looking for her Amstaff mix, so she kept him for herself. It was around this time that I showed up. I liked Dina immediately. You know, it happens. I had only known her for about 5 minutes, but I felt like this was my person. Our relationship developed rapidly. Dina was very nervous when she first brought me over to her place to introduce me to Hector. How he liked me was very important to her. I live outside the city, and I invited Dina over for the weekend. Of course, Hector too. I was cooking dinner when I saw a strange scene outside the window. My girlfriend was digging in the backyard with the dog. Hector was behaving as a dog should, glad to be in nature. Well, Dina, she was doing everything he did, walking on all fours, digging holes in the sand with her hands, growling at a butterfly, and she and Hector were sniffing each other. But that was nothing compared to what happened next. I decided to talk to Dina about it that evening. "Dina, I saw you and Hector in the yard today." "You saw us playing?" "Yeah, playing, let's call it that." I stared at her, expecting her to explain her behavior to me, but she pretended not to understand what I was talking about. I was up late working that evening because I had to turn in a project. Dina went to bed before me. I quietly crept up to her, leaned over, and was about to give her a kiss when I made eye contact with Hector. He was lying right there with her on the bed, under the covers. Dina was spooning him. He lifted his head from the pillow, turned in my direction, and seemed to want to say, "What are you looking at? Get out of here." I went and slept on the couch. In the morning, I left for work, leaving Dina and Hector at home. When I returned, I heard someone calling me. "Tom. Hey, Tom. Shh, come here." It was my neighbor, Billy. I was confused. He couldn't decide how to start the conversation for a long time, but finally said, "I don't want you to think that I was eavesdropping, but our properties are right next to each other. This morning I was in the garden and heard voices. I saw you leave and knew that you weren't home. So, Tom, Dina, Is that your girlfriend's name? Well, she's cheating on you. A man came over straight into your house. I didn't see him, but I heard her talking to him. She was laughing, I think they kissed, and well, you know." I was silent as I tried to process this information, and then went home. Psst, she was calling him Hector. His name was Hector, that man who went into your house. Keep this between us, okay? I had heard enough. I gathered my thoughts and went into Dina. When I entered the house, Dina and Hector were snuggling on the couch. She didn't even get up to greet me. Hi? I have some concerns about your relationship with Hector." "What are you talking about?" Her expression changed dramatically. I could tell that she was going to deny everything again. "I like being with you, and I want to be with you. You have become so special to me during our time together. But what do you want? And I like being with you. Why are you doubting that, Tom?" "Oh, Hector, what would I do without you?" "I'm going out to play with him in the yard, and then will you take us to the city? Hector and I have things to do there tomorrow." I dropped them off. I couldn't fall asleep for a long time, trying to figure out how to navigate this situation. I wrote Dina a long message in which I outlined all of my concerns. A week has passed since then. She hasn't messaged me, nor I her. But I miss her very much, and I always have to restrain myself from calling. I don't want her to have to choose between me and the dog, but I also want to occupy an important place in her life, and I want her to explain everything to me and not to force me to wonder about the truth, which even scares me. Thank you for listening to my story.